All right, guys, welcome back to Podcasting on a Plane. The true story of aviation is told from both sides of the mic. You know, when I sat down to record this episode, I intended it to be a mix of topics, kind of a bunch of stuff, but as it turns out, there's actually a theme that ended up running through all the stuff that I compiled for it. I've received a lot of really cool feedback since the last episode, and it's all aviation career related. So, since the last full episode, the FAA has opened and closed a hiring window for air traffic control new hires. So for all of you who applied, I wish you and your application the best. And hopefully, the powers that be at Human Resources will make some good choices, and we can maybe work together someday. You'll remember Bill from the last episode. He was hired in the 80s, and he made it through his initial training in Oklahoma City, otherwise known as the Screen, at least that's what they called it back then. And then he went to a tower, but he didn't quite make it to certification. But despite that, he still recommends ATC as a career field 30 years later. And there's another listener out there who many of you who are fans of APG will probably know really well, and he has a similar story. Dave Abbey heard what Bill had to say, and he sent me a little story about himself.
Hi, Brandon. This is David Abbey. I'm calling you from Kennedy Airport, watching the runway 22 right departures on a early summer evening. Just calling to leave you some feedback about your podcast, and I'm enjoying your first few episodes and all the content, and just want to share a quick story with you, which I was reminded by when you interviewed Bill on a previous episode. I wanted to be an air traffic controller for a very long time in my mid-20s. Went to the Collegiate Training Initiative program in Minneapolis and was subsequently hired by the Boston Center to be a controller there. But long story short, it turned out it wasn't the career for me. I didn't really have the decision-making skills, the ability to handle the stresses that could come with the job, and basically the assertiveness. So not long after I was hired and didn't even make it to be really a radar associate, I resigned. I was quite disappointed. My family was pretty upset as well. But I realized, hey, it's not for me. I'm going to move on. So I have a totally non-aviation related career now, but I'm able to listen to plenty of podcasts, do a lot of av geeking out, and just want to say I'm glad to have discovered your podcast through the Airline Pilot Guy and added it to the mix of great shows. So keep up the great work. You speak really clearly and not too technical. And thanks for producing the show. Take care.
Dave, thanks for the kind words, man. And more importantly, thanks for sharing your personal story. I know a lot of people aren't always open to sharing their personal stuff, so I really appreciate you sending me that. Oh, and the ATC in the background, brilliant. Love it. If any of you want to send me a story to share with the other listeners like these guys have, we'd all love to hear it. You can send me an audio file, or I could call you and we can record the conversation, or you could email me and I'll just read it, whatever you want. But any experiences you have in aviation are worth sharing, and I'd like to share yours if I can. Another little bit of feedback that I got was a listener submitted question, and it's from Kerry. Hi, Kerry. She says, "Hi, Brandon. I just love your podcasts." Aw, thank you. How old is the oldest student you've ever taught? Do some instructors set age limits? Maybe a podcast on the challenges or experiences of teaching older pilots how to fly. Kerry. Well, Kerry, thanks for your question. And yeah, actually, age is an interesting thing, isn't it? Now, we've all heard of pilots flying into their 90s. I think I actually saw something once about a guy who was still an active pilot and he was 100. But of course, that's not really common. But if they can do it, more power to them. And honestly, I'd hope to be in that club someday too myself. I'm actually currently mentoring a guy right now who's in his 70s. And he's one of those guys that you never guess he was a 70-something, 60s maybe, but he's taken very good care of himself, and I'm sure he's one of those guys that will be flying into his 90s just fine. I also fly with a guy who's going to be on a podcast in the future, and he's in his 80s, and he flies regularly, but he's decided it's probably best to bring a friend along when he does, and I have nothing but respect for that policy. As a matter of fact, I give this guy his BFR every year. He does it every year for the club that he's in and so forth, but he always chooses to fly with me. And I'm always impressed at how well he still flies the airplane stick and rudder-wise. His landings are good, he does the radios, and he's even learned to use his portable GPS that he bought himself so he doesn't get lost. So he even embraces newer technology, which is great. And I think that has a lot to do with why he's still happily flying in his 80s. But again, he's always got a pilot friend along with him, just in case. At my airport, there's actually a guy too who comes to mind, and he flies several times a week, and we all recognize his voice. He's a student pilot, of course. He's not certified yet. He's getting on the elderly side, but not too bad. But he's struggling, and he's gone through several instructors in, I think, at least 2 flying clubs now, maybe more that I don't know about. But he's just not getting it. And in this case, my opinion, though, is that age is not the issue. It's something else. What exactly, I don't know. But age would probably be the easiest thing to blame. But I just deep down, I don't think it's that. I firmly believe that most people, given enough time and money, could eventually become safe, effective pilots. But there's always going to be a couple that just probably should have hobbies that move more slowly, right? Hobbies that are a little more two-dimensional, if you know what I mean. So with respect to the age limit question, I don't have a specific number myself, and I asked a couple of my instructor friends, and they don't have a specific number either. But my personal policy is that I'll teach and mentor anybody who's physically and mentally capable. But when I instruct older individuals, I, of course, have to approach things differently, right? Like somebody who is in their 70s will approach things differently than someone in their 20s. No surprises there. But in my experience, the most important attribute the CFI must possess when instructing a more mature individual is patience. As we age, it's well documented that it simply just takes longer for our brains to write the lines of code that are needed to learn a new thing. And there's also a lifetime of experiences which could aid, or conversely, could impede the learning process. So that brings me to the other important thing to always remember when you're teaching individuals who differ in age by a generation or more from you, and that's finding common ground, right? The farther away that somebody is in age from you, whether it's older or younger, the person, the more you have in common with them, the better off you are. But chances are you don't have much. So you have to try to relate to them in a way that they're going to benefit from. Anyway, Kerry, that's my 2 cents about that, and I hope that answers your questions. And if not, email me again, and I'll try to do a better job next time. Speaking of guys from a different generation, though, the rest of this episode is actually an interview I did with a guy named Anthony Tamburrini. He heard about me from APG, which seems to be a bit of a theme here. Anyway, he's a motivated 20-something with what seems to be a good head on his shoulders and aspirations of becoming an airline pilot. And it's actually really funny why he contacted me, and you'll hear that early on in the interview. But suffice it to say, he heard my last episode centering on starting your career at an FBO, and that's precisely what he's doing. And guess where it is? So, without any further ado, here's my interview with Anthony. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you heard about the podcast and how you got into aviation.
Well, a little bit about myself is I'm a young, aspiring airline pilot. I just recently got my private pilot license back in February. I worked on it for about a year at John Wayne Airport here in Southern California, and got it in February, and been flying the friendly skies as little as I go here. Of course, money's always gets in the way sometimes, but for the most part, everything's been good. I worked at a FBO at John Wayne Airport. That's basically my life right now, is the airport, so that's always fun. And I heard about the podcast via Captain Jeff on a shout-out he did on one of his episodes. So I got to give a shout-out to you, Captain Jeff. Thank you for getting me interested in this brand-new podcast. I love to hear it every week, whenever it comes out. And, yeah.
All right, sounds good. So you work at an FBO at John Wayne Airport. And does that have any reason or anything to do with why you contacted me after my last episode?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with it. But in the previous episode, you mentioned that the FBO switch over at John Wayne Airport from signature flight support to ACI Jet. And I reached out to you in regards to, I have a little bit of background in the fact that I worked for signature flight support. Now I currently work at ACI Jet. It's been quite a journey, and it has a very, very positive effect on the airport and personally my life, and I think a lot of general aviation in general. I'd say it probably dates back to, I first started hearing about this whole switchover thing back in December. They reached, the Board of Supervisors was reevaluating the lease situation at John Wayne Airport. And little by little, I didn't really think much of it. Neither did our coworkers. I mean, you think of Signature as a major FBO superpower, and they were. They had almost all the resources they need. They had a great corporate system. They had pretty much all the resources they need to keep the FBO there running. But I mean, when you don't own the facility and you have the Board of Supervisors letting you they had you on a month-to-month lease for quite a few years, actually, and that's kind of exactly what happens is when someone gives you a notice of eviction, there's really not much you can do. So back in I think it was January, we first started hearing about the this actually coming into place. Like, okay, this might actually happen, and there's Board of Supervisor meetings at Orange County. Us employees really didn't actually hear much about what was going on. It was all happening behind the scenes. So back in February, the Board of Supervisors mentioned that this was probably going to be the lease was probably going to be awarded to a different company. At the time, it wasn't quite. They weren't quite sure of who was going to be the ones taking over the lease at John Wayne Airport. So there was no companies that were completely in the spotlight yet. There was a list, which that's a whole other story, but there's a whole list that other FBOs such as Clay Lacy, that was another big name, and smaller FBOs, ACI Jet was of course one of them on the list. And the Board of Supervisors said, here's a couple options who could possibly take over the lease at John Wayne Airport. Hearing this, all of us employees were starting to piece it all together at Signature. So later coming weeks, it kept on getting dragged out with the lawyers. We had the Signature Flight Support was talking to us. They were very good about communicating the information with us once this was all out. So we pretty much knew what was going to happen. And as much as they told us they were going to stay, we pretty much knew that there's really not much you can do when you don't own the facility. So it was I think it was March. It was like early March. That's when the Board of Supervisors decided to award the lease to ACI Jet. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the actual meeting, the Board of Supervisors meeting. I was actually watching it on my phone because they were live broadcasting it, and that's when everything kind of changed. So we basically, as an individual myself, I was just kind of like, okay, I guess it's time to go to the new company. The Signature was trying to make sure that they kept as many employees as possible. And I mean, that was good on their part, but I mean, there comes a point in time when you have to actually think about yourself and think about your own job, and you realize, okay, maybe at the end of this, I won't have a job. So personally, I went and reached out to ACI Jet, and they were very willing to take as many Signature Flight Support employees as they needed, and they were very open to anyone who wanted to apply and wanted to make sure they had a job at the end of this. That they were the ones who were willing to make sure we all had it. So a few weeks later, I get a call, and a couple of other guys get calls saying, basically getting job offers. You go through the whole application phase, you get the drug test, all that stuff, and then they approve it. And about late March, some of the employees that applied, we all got a very awesome opportunity to go up to San Luis Obispo at their main FBO facility for training, and that was a pretty awesome experience in itself. They put us in a really awesome resort right on the beach in Pismo Beach, and it basically was a nice little luxury vacation, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a job training at the same time. So we had two of those training. We call them boot camps. So we had two training boot camps, 1 week after another week. So a different group went to a different one. I fortunately went to both of them, and it was awesome because you got to really know the team, got to train them, and they basically just let the guys who worked at the Signature previously, they just kind of like said, hey, you know what, you guys know what you guys are doing. Let's if you guys have really good experience, let's put you guys in a more of a leadership role and have you guys train all the new guys. So a few of us kind of veterans at Signature, we went and trained all the new guys at ACI who applied. And like I said, it was a really awesome opportunity for us. And so there was good team bonding, and we went out. We were in San Luis Obispo, so I mean, there's awesome stuff you can do there. Couple good work parties they had for us. Just I was like, hey, here's a good welcome to the team. So they're very open, welcoming. The culture ACI has is just a really, really awesome getting the fun get together kind of culture, and you can see that same culture dragging out with us over here at SNA. So what happened next after the training session is we went to basically set up for opening up the FBO, and the opening date was April 1st. So that was going to be a big day in itself. So the next few weeks between the training sessions and getting opened up, we had a little temporary office, and I wish I had a picture of what this office looked like. It was something else. It was just crayons with computers and all this equipment, furniture, and everything you can think of to run and operate an FBO just in this tiny little office that was a couple of blocks away from the airport. So when we had the temp office, we were basically taking in calls. We were opening up the reservation system, and we were basically building ourselves up for the opening day. In the meantime, we got delivered fuel trucks. We got delivered electros, the tows of the planes. We got delivered all sorts of stuff. Everything you need, we pretty much almost thought of it. So the time April 1st, at midnight to be exact, came around, we were all ready to move all the equipment in. And so long story short, basically April 1st came around midnight, where we have basically an army of people sitting at this little tiny temp office with all these trucks packed with furniture and, like I said, equipment, refrigerators, all that stuff we needed to operate an FBO, standing by. And the time came to where we got the keys, and they did the walkthrough with the owners, and they gave us the green light to basically take over. We basically started moving in. So that itself was probably one of the funnest nights. I got to admit, I was probably up that day for 20 hours. And basically, you got to move everything all in, and then 5 o'clock rolls around, and we are open for business. So that's how it all played out. Luckily, it wasn't a busy day. So we got all the furniture, equipment, all that stuff in there, and we were open 5 a.m., had all the customers all ready to go. And just that day alone, we had our fuel prices the lowest John Wayne for avgas, the lowest John Wayne's seen in years. And I had a couple general aviation pilots tell me this is the first time they've ever bought fuel at John Wayne Airport in some odd 20 years or something like that, which to me that's amazing. The fact that there's fuel so high beforehand, and it's crazy because now you see so much general aviation actually parking at the FBO. You know, you come in and you get 3 hours free, and you don't have to take fuel. But if you want to take fuel, it's a pretty minimal price and stuff. And all the flight schools are happy. It seems like there's a big step up of the general aviation community. And of course, and we take care of we try to take care of everybody exactly the same, whether it's a Cessna 172 to a Gulfstream G650. They're all our customers to us, so we really want to make sure we take care of all of them. Some exciting news, though, for us is currently we are under construction for a new lobby. The new lobby should be available around late August. So, I mean, if you're flying in the Southern California area, please come by, tell them Anthony sent you, check out our new lobby, park for how long you want, and should be good. we're definitely very excited for what the airport has become for us, and we are we're very open to any customer who wants to come in. So,
all right. Well, it sounds like what AOPA was saying, at least, about being glad that there's a new FBO in town with perhaps lower pricing. It sounds like they're clearly happy about this, and it looks like those lower prices for general aviation pilots may be coming true as they had hoped. So, at my airport, I mentioned on the last podcast, there's 4 big FBOs and then a 5th one for helicopters. But, each one has its own little niche for itself. How is ACI planning to position itself at John Wayne with regard to general aviation small aircraft? Are they going to cater more to them, or are they just going to try to go more for the jets?
Well, our theory is most likely that we want to cater everyone the same. We're trying to rearrange the ramp in a way to where we can take more general aviation airplanes, and it tried not to be an inconvenience and affect the operations of our big scale airplanes. But once we get the client base we are looking for and stuff, we are planning on making sure we can take care of the large jets as well as the small piston aircraft, because we do realize how important it is to have general aviation at John Wayne Airport. And we have 2 facilities actually at the airport. We have a west side facility and an east side facility, and the west side facility has basically all of our tenant jets that take in the hangar. And we also have fuel trucks over there to where they basically deploy out to all the small general aviation airplanes that are tie down at John Wayne on the west side of the airport. Whereas on the east side, we take more of the transient aircraft. So we do a lot of fueling on our east side ramp for transient general aviation aircraft, along with all the flight schools that are on the east side. So all in all, it seems so far what I've seen, the huge boost in general aviation at the airport, and you can clearly see it from who comes in to flight schools and helicopters coming in and stuff like that. So our plan is to make sure we have everyone covered, from small 172s to large scale Gulfstreams, Globals, and the larger operators.
That sounds really nice. I mean, in all honesty, I've actually avoided John Wayne a couple times for pickups. I have a really good friend who worked down off Birch Street, which I think is about 3 or 4 blocks down the street from you guys. And we've actually met up at a different airport that he drove to, just literally so I didn't have to pay over $100 just to do a pickup in a 182. So it sounds like things might be getting a little more inviting for general aviation pilots at John Wayne. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree, especially being a pilot for myself as myself. You definitely do see it. And if I were to be based at a different airport, I would take this as a new opportunity to fly down to John Wayne Airport, check it out. Like I said, it's 3 hours free if you're a small single engine aircraft. So you're not going to break the bank for just popping in and picking up someone anymore.
Wow, 3 hours free. That's incredible. That sounds great.
Yeah.
I'll take it. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Anthony, it's great to hear about all this going on. And it's also, you just mentioned, of course, that obviously you're a pilot as well. So you know what it feels like to pick an airport based on, how much you're going to have to pay to go there, right? So tell us a little bit more about how you got into aviation at a young age, and then how working at an FBO in different parts of line service is helping you understand the industry on your way up.
Absolutely. So let's see here. I moved to Southern California after I graduated high school, and in 2014. So I've lived here for about 3 years now. When I first got here, my intentions were as I actually wanted to be an A&P mechanic. So I went to the local community college, OCC, and went to go to A&P school. It was a lot more competitive than I thought. There was a lot of people wanting to get in, and especially not being a SoCal resident yet. That was also especially hard to get into the classes. So, I mean, I went through about a year and a half of going through A&P school and trying to really try to get in there and work my way to getting classes and stuff. And it wasn't working out. And to be honest, I don't think I would have made the best mechanic in the world either. So I decided I was going to try to do a switch, and like, maybe do I want to hold a wrench or do I want to actually fly the airplanes? And I did the switch to wanting to fly airplanes, because actually, first off, I thought becoming a pilot was a lot harder until I started to see what the situation was in the airline industry and the flying industry right now, where this big shortage of pilots. So it was a lot easier than I thought. And then I went back to the same school and I did ground school at OCC, which was also a great experience. The classes were fun. And for my private, I did meteorology, I did avionics, not avionics, I did aerodynamics and private pilot. So I did that, and one of my professors was a personal flight instructor for his own company he had. And I got to talking to him, and I was like, "Hey, what is it to fly with you and stuff?" And he's like, "Oh, they give you discounts on students and stuff like that." And he had a pretty awesome little plane called the Sling. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of it, but it's a small light sport aircraft that is made in South Africa, and it's quite actually a really cool airplane. It flies great, stick and rudder, so you get the general fundamentals of flying all in one package there. With it has a cool, nice little EFIS system built in it. So I flew. I did the ground school and I did the flight training. I finished up ground school last summer of 2016, and kind of waited a little bit to get my written done, but eventually I did get the written done. And I was doing the flight training, all the solos, and that was always fun. I mean, my first solo by myself was actually to Ramona, so that was interesting. And of course, it's scary to do a cross country solo on your own. And then I did a cross country solo to Camarillo, and on top of that, I did another cross country to El Monte and Santa Barbara, and that was probably the funnest experience that I did flying by myself, because you're flying long distance by yourself, and you get to deal with Class Bravo airspace going over LAX, and you're basically out there all day, so you have to come back, and it's the most rewarding feeling, of course, once you get back. But after that solo, I pretty much felt like I was ready, so got the check ride scheduled, and had it in February, and did the written, and did the written a few weeks before that. Scored pretty well on that, and then I did the check ride, and that was it, and the rest was getting the license afterwards. So that was pretty rewarding in itself.
Awesome. So are you going straight into your instrument rating now?
Yeah, actually, I'm about ready to get started on my instrument rating. One of the things ACI Jet got for the employees, actually, and I forgot to mention this, is they bought us a DA-40 for the employees to use, and we're going to have our own little flying club for the employees. And once we get that DA-40 in, which should be in August, I can schedule myself on it, and I got to pay just a really small fee, and I'm going to try to get my instrument in that with an instructor. So I'm really excited, and in itself, that's a great opportunity they're providing for me there. Is and the other employees who want to fly, is they offered us an airplane that we can use at any given time. So that in itself is a great perk.
Man, how do I get a job up there?
Yeah, well, fly online.
Sounds good. Well, it's great to know you're just going to continue on barreling through this, and that your new company's actually got a way to help you out. That's really cool of them. Yeah,
it's a really cool opportunity. It's gonna be exciting, and there's gonna be a lot of fun that comes with getting a fly plane that we can use that in with any given time.
Absolutely. So big plans for the future. You're going to be airline pilot, keep working at the FBO throughout your training, I'm guessing, and then just start applying when the time comes.
Yeah. So, working at the FBO really keeps your head in the game. Actually, I got the FBO job, and I forgot to mention this in the last question, but I got the job while in AMP school, and I just kind of looked at it. I was like, okay, this it gets your head in the industry and all that stuff, and it really is a good, if you really want to be in general aviation or just gain a lot of connections. This is the job to have. And, when you're driving a field truck around the airport, you get to meet people and you get to know them after a while. And also when you get clients in or you have your base tenants, you never know, because a few years down the line, that charter company base tenant that you have could be hiring. And if you have your commercial rating or something like that, you can basically fly for them. So for all of you guys who are listening, I would love to tell you guys that the FBO industry is a great starting point for aviation. And basically from there on out, I mean, all the connections you make can make all the difference in the world, especially in this industry where you know someone. And when you know someone in the FBO industry, that's good, because then you'll come across someone, I guarantee you, again later in a few years.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that, in the last podcast, that was kind of my original point, was that's where I started too. And I still know people from those days. I mean, that was 20 years ago. And I've still kept contact with a couple of the people that I met back then. And, if there's, just like you said, if there's one lesson for anybody listening to this to come away with, it's aviation is a small world, and any kind of networking you can do will serve you well in the future, guaranteed. And honestly, once you get your certificates and ratings, you're thrown in a pool of competition with hundreds, maybe even thousands of other people who are similarly qualified to you. They have a multi-engine rating, an instrument, commercial, so forth. But what's going to get you hired is who you know, especially in general aviation. And as you said, working in FBO is one of the best places to meet all those people. So in the future, if you want to go work for one of those companies, they're already going to remember you. They're going to have seen you hustle. They're going to remember your customer service skills and how quickly you turn them around way back in the day at John Wayne. And guess whose resume goes to the top of the stack?
Ours, basically.
Exactly, 100%. Well, it sounds like you're off to a great start in aviation. So congratulations on sticking with the FBO thing, and also congratulations on your private. That's the first one, and it's probably the most important. And absolutely. So any of our listeners, if they want to ask you questions, is that something you'd be interested in getting in contact with anybody?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you'd like to get in contact with me, feel free to reach out to me via my email. Is Mr. Friendly Sky. It's MrFriendlySky@gmail.com. If you guys have any questions about the FBO industry or ACI Jet in general, please reach out to me. I'll give you guys all the information I have, and if you guys need any advice, just please feel free to reach out to me.
All right, man. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope that a lot of people out there listening are understanding how important networking is, and how important the FBO industry is as sort of the backbone of support of how this whole general aviation thing works.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk with you soon. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Interesting story, huh? I really enjoyed talking with him, and not just because he backed up my story or whatever, but because it's really nice to see a young kid with that level of motivation who's taking action to affect his future. We actually did quite a bit of talking sort of off record before I hit the record button, of course, and I'll tell you what, his generation often gets a really bad rap for being sort of idealistic, but lacking in the skill or focus for affecting the change that they want. And I'm not going to get into some millennial ideology thing right now, but he does not fit that stereotype. He has a strong vision for his future, and he's executing it. He's making good on it. So I really wish him all the best in his aviation future. So if you want to submit something to the show, you can, of course, do it in audio format, or you could just email me, or you can like and leave a comment on the Facebook page, or if you're flying by, VHF shoutouts are actually kind of my favorite. But no matter what method you choose, I'll do my best to get you on the show. If you have suggestions for future show topics or individuals you want me to interview, social media you'd like me to share, send it on in. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is to check out the website, which is podcastingonaplane.com. And P.S., you can expect major improvements in the website in the near future. There, you're going to find links to all the social media. You can message me directly from the Podcasting on a Plane Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter. That's at Podcast on a Plane. And my Instagram, Podcasting on a Plane, will work too. If you're liking what you're hearing, the best way, of course, to keep up is to subscribe. You can do that through iTunes or Stitcher, or if you don't have either of those, go straight to shoutengine.com and you can stream it straight from there. Subscriptions and ratings, of course, make all the difference in podcast land, so I ask that you please subscribe and leave a review. You'll get new episodes automatically that way as soon as I release them. Well, that's all I have for now. Thanks again for listening. Your frequency change is approved until next time, and report back on this frequency for the next episode. Good day. The Podcasting on a Plane podcast is presented for entertainment purposes only. My comments and those of my guests, the website's content, and any of the social media, etc. are not part of my official responsibility as a controller or an FAA employee. The views and opinions you hear on the podcast are mine and those of my guests, and not necessarily that of the FAA. There is no nexus between podcasting on a plane and the FAA. Also, while I am a CFI, I'm not your CFI, nor am I your mechanic, your doctor, your shrink, or your spouse. This podcast is presented for entertainment, camaraderie, and fun, but is in no way, shape, or form professional advice. It's not legal counsel, and it's definitely not flight instruction. If you are in need of professional advice, get some from somewhere more appropriate than a podcast, no matter how good this one may be.